Hi there, my name's Joanna O'Malley and I am a photographer who studied at UCD. I have been into photography ever since I was a little kid. When I was 8 for my communion I was given a digital camera, and then when I was 16 I went and I bought my first second-hand DSLR. So I've always had a love there, but it actually wasn't until I came to UCD and that I got to really give it a go. At UCD I studied zoology. It was an absolutely amazing degree. I loved every second of it. My first memory with UCD and photography was actually in my first week, an orientation week. My sister at the time was in final year and she was the comms editor for the University Observer, and I was this new student who didn't really know anyone that well, and she marched me into their paper office and she said, "You need a photographer, she's a photographer, you know, she should come and help us." And straight away they were just the most lovely people, and I suddenly said, hey, this camera could get me some friends. Where I worked there as the paper photographer for about 4 years, and one of the years I spent as the photography editor for the paper. I got involved in pretty much every society you could think of. I think one year I joined 30 plus societies and it was a big dent in my wallet for sure. The 2 years add up. In my time I was on the committees of the LNH, the Arts Society and the Biological Society. I actually ran the Biological Society and the Arts Society. It was amazing. Societies were all looking for photographers to cover their events, and they suddenly saw this girl with a camera everywhere and said, hey, you take photos, can you come and photograph this debate, can you come and photograph this society ball? And from that I kind of, through word of mouth, I got a name for myself, and it just kind of snowballed after that. One of the best things about my time photographing in UCD and working for the Student Centre was that I got to go to the UCD musicals for free, because I would come and photograph them, and they were amazing to photograph, all these students in these bright clothes, dancing, singing, and I don't think I would be as into musicals as I am now without photography, so that was one of the absolute benefits of it. One of the really great things about studying a subject such as zoology, where it's very immediate, you're out looking for bugs and creepy crawlies and you're looking at biodiversity, is that with the camera you can kind of capture that in the moment. So I was very, very lucky with my degree that we got to go on 2 field trips, so one to Spain and one to Costa Rica. Costa Rica was tropical field ecology, and a couple of us were quite keen into photography, and getting to bring the camera out and see howler monkeys and snakes and everything like that, it really brought home how amazing that degree was, and the fact that the lecturers really let us combine those two loves, and we still got the college work done, but we got to take home memories. Was really amazing. So I think it's incredibly important that while this was something that UCD really did enable me to become a photographer, even though I didn't study it in my degree, but I think when people see that you have a love for something, they kind of allow you to bring it into other aspects, be that your study or anything like that, and yeah, I'm incredibly grateful. So with all of that and all of the society work, I ended up getting pulled into doing quite a lot of photography work on the side, photographing society balls and things like that. And through that, the Student Centre kind of noticed me always hanging around with the camera, and actually were really kind and gave me a photography job alongside my college degree. So it was really UCD I have to thank for my kind of tackling that imposter syndrome and saying, hey, you really could do something with this. So I have UCD to thank for a lot of that, and just getting to know everyone with the camera. It kind of was an all-access pass, which is amazing, and I got to capture moments that I'll definitely keep with me for years to come. So because of all of that experience with UCD, once I graduated I worked with the UCD societies as the communications executive, and a lot of that was just capturing content and showing all of the great work that UCD societies was doing with my camera. So again, I think it's just taking it with you everywhere where you go, and a skill that while I am a part-time photographer and I sell prints and I do event work and I do work for headshots and things like that, I also work part-time as an NGO worker. So between the two, it's like both sides. I get to teach biodiversity during the day and then go meet new exciting people after work, they're both my jobs, but I get to do what I love, which is amazing. So on to tips. If you are into photography, the first thing I would say is it's not about what gear you have. I know for some people it is. For some people, photography, the thing that they love most about it is the technicalities of everything and, you know, the different settings and how that works, and that's amazing. I'm not really that kind of a photographer. For me, it's about capturing a moment or showing people in their best lights, or just kind of recreating a feeling of a landscape that you would only feel really in person. So for that kind of photography, my advice would be it really doesn't matter what gear you have. Like I said, I bought my first DSLR secondhand, and it does just as good work as a first-hand camera, unless you're out shooting every single day and you need a high shutter count, which is just how many photos you can take on a camera. I would always recommend someone to buy a secondhand first. A poor workman blames their tools, and I think especially when you're starting out, really it's whatever you have. You know, if you have a phone in your pocket, if you have a GoPro, if you have maybe a starter camera, a secondhand camera, that's all perfect. The second thing I would say, and I think a lot of people are maybe scared to say this, if you're looking to capture a moment, don't be worried about like what your settings are. It's more important that you take lots of pictures. So for me, when I was starting off, especially in the early days of college, I might be shooting an event and I would take 1,000 pictures at a musical, and then I might only send on 180. So I knew I had the material because I just kept clicking away. And the more you do something, the easier it becomes and the less photos you take. But we're so lucky in the era of digital that you can afford to just take the photos, and you have that, you know, safety blanket there, and that's something I'd really, really recommend. I would also recommend shooting or capturing people you know well, who don't really mind you bothering them with a camera, getting to know people and how they look best in certain lights or what expressions works for them. I think when you observe people you know pretty well, it just makes it easier to kind of see that in other people. But as well as that, it just means that you're continuing to practice what you love. So I'd absolutely recommend asking your friends if you can take pictures of them with societies. That was a really great way for me to practice as well. As well as that, I would recommend that if you are taking photos, just to make sure you have your camera with you. I think sometimes, like, this is a very bulky thing that I use on the job, and sometimes that can be heavy, but if you're looking to improve, even if it's just your phone, make sure you have something with you to take pictures in the moment. The amount of times I've gone for a walk and regretted not having that camera with me because I'm missing capturing a really great moment it's pretty shameful. And the next thing I would say is just keep practicing. One thing I would recommend, and sometimes I don't really recommend this because I think social media has a lot of flaws, but if you are looking to improve your photography and to kind of hold yourself accountable to keep practicing, setting up a photography account where you can just dump everything onto it and other people can engage with you and you can find a community, I think that can be incredibly helpful. I know societies, you know, I got to meet a lot of other photographers on campus in UCD. If you're out in the workplace, you know, an online community could be the way to go, especially with COVID, where you can check in with each other and compare. Like I said, it does have its flaws in that you can have that comparison game, but if you know that you're doing it for you and you want to get better, I think it can be a really great way to practice. The camera is a way to show or highlight what you're doing or who you're working with or the story they have to tell, and if you're able to use a camera in that way, I think it's amazing. So I would recommend to anyone, even if you have a slight interest, just to kind of get familiar with the camera and don't be afraid of it, because it can give you so many opportunities, and I don't think I would have had quite as an amazing time as I did in my time in UCD, fitting almost like 5 student lifetimes into one without the camera opening those doors for me, giving me that part-time job that let me stay on campus for longer, or giving me that belief that I could use it as a way to kind of move forward in the world. So I have UCD to thank for that.